Okay. You can see on the replay, he's doing some very difficult tricks, but he doesn't quite have the elevation over the horse that we saw from Mogilny, partly because his arms just aren't as long.
Marian Reason from Romania, 19 years of age, awaiting the judge's decision, anxiously pacing the sidelines there, and he comes up with a 9.75, which puts him in second place right now with a 19.50. But Phil Cahoy, who's in fourth place from the United States, is getting ready to work on the pommel horse. Now, Cahoy needs a 9.85 to go into second place.
He just might be able to get it. Phil has a very good routine.
That first move was really hard. He reached from one end of the horse all the way to the other.
He does Russian Moors in a straddle position, right into flares. Phil has great scissors. Very high leg kicks. A Russian Moor to the end, and a loop with a half dismount. Not the most difficult dismount. He should have done a more difficult dismount for the big score, but still a clean exercise.
Phil Cahoy needing a 9.85 to move into second place ahead of Reason from Romania.
Here's these Russian Moors that Phil does. Actually, you know how he came up with these tricks? He was playing around in practice one day, and his legs came apart. And he said, hey, that looks pretty good.
9.75 for Phil Cahoy of Lincoln, Nebraska. That's not enough to beat Reason. Now, Phil did well, but he knows that Yuri Korolev of the Soviet Union, who came into the competition a tenth of a point ahead of him, is coming up, and it's going to be hard for Phil to hold on to third place. Here's Korolev, who needs a 9.75 to finish in second place. A perfect 10 to tie Mogilny.
His body type is not typical of the other Soviet athletes. He's really rather short and stocky, and it's most noticeable in this event.
You know, I think of all the events, this is probably his weakest because of his body style, like you mentioned. He's very clean, though, and he's going to give away very few points to deductions. Nice work on a flare here up to a handstand. Now, there's a half pirouette and then an undercut on the way down. That's original work. Back into circles, back more travel to the end, and a loop to a handstand with his legs together, a D move, one of the harder moves you can do as a dismount.
Yuri Korolev, married to a nurse. His wife's name's Galina. Alexei, a young son. And we'll look at part of his routine once again.
This is probably the most spectacular part of his routine. He does a flare up to a handstand. Now here comes the originality. He does a pirouette and then undercut on the way down. He gets points for originality, and of course he did it with perfect form.
And his score 9.90 moves him into second place, while Reason of Romania drops to third. Phil Cahoy of the United States is out of the running right now. He's in fourth place.
Hey, and there are our American girls. They're getting ready for the competition tomorrow and also cheering on their teammates.
Team competition starts tomorrow. We'll be covering that. Meanwhile, this is Brian Babcock of the United States. He has a 9.6, a 9.9 would give the United States a medal. That would tie him for third place. He's working the pommel horse.
Brian's very good on the horse. He starts with loops, travels up and across the horse. So far, so good. On the back, we're okay. He's leaning back. That's going to cost him about 3/10 of a point for hitting the horse. There's a handstand. Pirouette down. A little choppy in the middle there. He's got to keep better rhythm in the exercise if he wants the big score. This is better. Flares to the end. And a good dismount.
Brian Babcock, currently living in Carbondale, Illinois, and working on his master's degree in biomechanics at Southern Illinois University. Remember, I said he needed a 9.9 to give the United States a medal in the pommel horse. It would tie him for third with Reason of Romania.
And I just don't think he's going to get it, Charlie, because of the mistakes in the middle of the exercise.
And he looks like he knows he made those mistakes. We'll wait to score 9.55, so he missed a shot at earning a medal for the United States. Let's check the standings. Mogilny wins it with a gold medal. On top, Korolev of the Soviet Union is second with the silver. The next event in the individual apparatus competition, this event has been one of the lowest scoring events of the competition. Now, Mogilny and Korolev come in owning a 9.75. They're the leaders, while East Germany has a shot at the medal with Sven Tippelt. He has a 9.65. Bulgaria also in the running. Now, you're looking at Sven Tippelt right now. He's the young man I just spoke of.
He's such an innovative gymnast on all the events, but he's not quite in the same class as the Soviets. as far as form and execution.
And you get a good look at the hand guards that he's using there in that shot. Great big leather straps that help him hang on to these rings on some of these giant swings. Nice work on a double whip it in a piked position. Right to a handstand. Now here's an inverted cross. And another whip it to an iron cross. Good combination.
He's looking much cleaner here in the finals than he did in the all-around and team competition.
There's an L support, and now here's a requirement, a press to a handstand. He must do that. Hold that handstand for 2 seconds. Nice front giant work. Okay, here's the dismount, a giant to a laid-out double backflip, and a good landing.
As Sven Tippelt, the 21-year-old from East Germany, came in with a 9.65 and will await his score. Good routines for Sven Tippelt.
And he seemed pretty pleased with it. He's had a great competition all the way along. There's the double whip it in a pike position. Back uprise to a handstand. Inverted iron cross. He needs to be just a little lower to get full points and full credit for that skill.
And he comes up with a 9.7, so that gives him a score of 19.35. But remember, he started a 1/10 of a point behind McGillney and Korolev. And McGillney is the next young man up on the rings. Here he is right now. He needs a 9.65 to take the lead.
McGillney is a big swinger. You'll notice in all of the movements here, he has tremendous extension from the rings and beautiful line. There's an inverted iron cross. No problem on the 2-second hold there. And a whip it to an iron cross.
You know, it's hard to believe that this event is considered his weakest event. I know a lot of gymnasts that wish their weakest event were this strong.
There's the press to a handstand. He's so locked out in his handstand. Giant swing. And another giant swing right to the top. He has to keep control of those rings. Back giant to a laid out double back. And a little hop on the landing.
I'll tell you, he's a beautiful athlete to watch, isn't he? McGillney of the Soviet Union, 20 years of age.
Look at this giant swing, perfect extension. Now he's going to pull and do 2 back somersaults in the laid out position, spot the ground there, and try and stick it. He takes 1 little hop, a 1/10 of a point deduction.
And the score for Valentin McGillney, a 9.90, so he's in first place with a 19.65 for score. Again, Korolev has to come up, and that young man you're familiar with.
Alexander Ditiatin. In fact, we competed together and against each other for quite a few years. Winner of 8 medals in the 1980 Olympics, 4 of them silver, 3 of them gold, and 1 bronze.
He's one of the judges on the rings today as you look at Kristosov. He needs a 9.8 to move into second place ahead of Tippelt. Now, a perfect 10 wouldn't help him because McGillney is in with a 19.65 and Kristosov is starting with a 9.60.
We've seen a lot of low scores on this event over the past few days. Why is that, Bart?
Well, I think rings, the whole event of still rings is actually stagnating. The gymnasts are finding it difficult to come up with original skills, and it's very important to have originality points in your routines. So far, his exercise is very clean. Nothing really spectacular. Good strength work on the inverted iron cross and the iron cross. Press to handstand. That was a little weak. And a giant swing to another laid out double somersault dismount.
As Kalifer Kristosov of Bulgaria, 17 years of age, and will await his score.
They have brought a very young team here, and I think they have some gymnasts who are going to be ones to contend with in the future.
We look at the judges walking around right now. What's going on, Bart?
There's Alexander Ditiatin. In fact, the judges have to have a conference now because of the 4 scores. You know, you throw out the high and the low, and you average the 2 in the middle. If the range is too far apart, the judges have to get together and come up with the reason for the deductions.
So they're talking over Kristosov's score. He anxiously awaits. As I mentioned, he needed a 9.8 to move into second place. He started with a 9.60. McGillney, current leader, 19.65 for him. Kristosov will watch part of his routine again.
Now he does a very difficult skill here. He's doing a front giant swing, and he's catching and an inverted iron cross. But notice, I think the inverted iron cross is a little too high. Perhaps that's the reason for the judges' conference. Then, of course, he lowers down to an iron cross and holds that for 2 seconds.
Kalifer Kristosov, a 9.60, so he's out of the running, especially with this young man coming up, Yuri Korolev of the Soviet Union. Now, Yuri needs a 9.95 to move out in front of McGillney, who's in first right now, a 9.9 to tie.
And this guy is a rock. Every time he performs, it seems as if he's completely sure of his performance. He never gives you any doubt that he might make a mistake. There's a back upright handstand right to the top. A whip it to a swing to a handstand. There's a good inverted iron cross and a front giant right to another one. That's the way that should be done. Nice work on the iron cross, back roll. Notice every position is exact. Perfect turnout on the rings and the handstand. Here's a giant to a laid-out double backflip.
And that's another double layout. I really think that's a problem in the judging system. You know these guys can do triple backs or full twisting, laid-out double backs. Why do they all choose to do the same dismount?
Well, I tell you, that is a failure with the judging system on the still rings because they've given the value of points the same for a laid-out double back as for a triple back. The triple back is much harder, but the layout double back is much easier to land. So it's really not encouraging the gymnast to reach out and try new skills.
9.90 for Korolev in the rubber match of the 3 events so far. And with Korolev tying McGillney for the gold in the rings, they each have 2 gold medals so far. And Sven Tippelt of East Germany picks up a bronze. The individual apparatus finals, each gymnast will take 2 vaults. They'll average today's vault, add that to the first day's score for the final score. This event so far has been the lowest scoring event of the competition. The top scores coming in belong to Valery Liukin, a youngster from the Soviet Union. He's the one to watch. You're watching right now, a young man named Kroll, Silvio Kroll.
Oh, what a great vault. Now, that was a handspring front with a 1.5 twist. He took 1 step on the landing, but that's one of the more difficult vaults being done today. Look at the position on the horse here. Great reach and extension. Now he's going to crank into that tuck and wrap 1.5 twists and try and spot the landing.
That was his first vault. He comes in with a 9.55. 9.75 is what he gets on the first vault. Now here's the second vault for the young man from East Germany.
He has good speed. Handspring pike front with a half. Now that was a pretty vault. Not as difficult as the first one, but a lot prettier.
9.725 on his first vault. And we'll await his second. A 9.75 on his first vault.
Okay, here's the replay now. Look at the great position in this pre-flight. Perfect form. Pike's in. Looks out for the half turn and spots the landing. That's a beautiful vault.
Silvio Kroll will await his score from East Germany. 9.7 and an average of 9.725 for 2 vaults gives him a total of 19.275. But the young man who's getting ready to come up on the vault is one we've seen a lot of today. The man who's walking away with all the medals. He's the guy to watch as you continue to watch Silvio Kroll. This is Yuri Korolev of the Soviet Union. Now, Korolev needs an average of 9.675 to tie for the lead.
He's going to have to put together 2 pretty good vaults because Liukin is coming up later in the rotation, and that guy is tough.
Korolev a 9.60 in the team competition.
Okay, a 1-arm handspring front in the pike position, and he came down pretty hard on that landing.
Bart, we're starting to see more and more vaulters use the 1-arm vault. How has that affected the reevaluation of the scoring system?
Well, actually, the judges are awarding 0.2 of a point higher for each vault if it's done off a 1 arm. Here's perfect position in the air, but crunch. He comes down pretty hard, and we noticed in earlier competitions this week that he really munched his ankles. I know they're sore.
First vault for Korolev, a 9.60. Here's his second.
Okay, now there's a 1-arm to a laid-out Sukahara, the same vault he used in the all-around competition. He landed a little short. Perfect position in the air here. but he doesn't quite have the rotation. And that's going to hurt when he comes in.
So the score for Koryev's second vault, the only man to ever win 2 world championship titles, all-around titles, Yuri Koryev, a 9.60. So he gets a 9.60 for the 2 vaults, and that gives him a 19.20. He is now in second place with Stoichkov coming up. Marian Stoichkov, he's 17 years of age. He's from Romania, and Stoichkov needs a 9.6.